Welcome to the Good Ride, a place where snowboard monogamy does not exist. I'm James Beastie, and today we're talking about the Never Summer Nokhu. I rode this with Union Atlas and Ride Deadbolts. Got this in a wide variety of conditions, some hard snow, some good groomers, some decent POW, and then a little more POW. To talk sizing, this is a pretty wide board. It's more mid-wide. This 55 surprisingly felt pretty good for me in my size 9 boots, even with this 26.3 centimeter waist. I was even curious about seeing what the 158 felt like because this was so easy. But this handled my weight. Now let's talk snowboard dating apps, some things that'll make you want to swipe right. This is forgiving. It has a pretty fast base when well waxed. It has a good turning experience for those who like to center weight their turns and really keep it between their feet. This has very good grip. Some things that'll make you want to swipe left. Sometimes these three camber profiles can fight each other and feel a little hooky. This doesn't feel as powerful out of a turn as their recurve triple camber, their ripsaw camber profile, and their shockwave camber profile. And lastly, it doesn't have very good setback directional float for low angle powder. So when it comes to shape, this is pretty directional and pretty tapered, but when you get it on snow, it feels very centered and very between the feet. It doesn't feel as setback and directional as it looks. When it comes to the camber profile, you got a lot of bends happening here with this Nokhu. There's a very mellow camber between the feet, then going to a good bit of early rise, and then a mellow elliptical camber going towards the tip and tail, and then a little bit of early rise before the nose and tail. What I find is it does still feel a little loose. It's a little better than all of Never Summer's boards that have rocker between the feet, going to a longer camber, but it still can feel a little loose, a little auto spinny, and sometimes when this camber gets engaged, it can feel a little hooky. The three cambers can sometimes fight each other. It's something that takes a little while to get used to. Once you do, it's okay, but coming from hybrid camber or hybrid rocker, it's definitely a different feel. When it comes to edge hold, there is very good grip throughout this side cut. It's got a slight disruption, and then you factor in that triple camber. It gives it a lot of grip. It's up there with some pretty disrupted side cuts, and it's something you can ride in hard to icy snow and it'll grip pretty well. In some situations, it felt a little bit grabby, and I felt like I needed to detune it to make it feel a little less hooky, and I did. And it helped a little, but there's still a little bit of that hook sometimes in medium hard snow. But in softer snow, it didn't feel super grabby, and I like that. Let's talk Nokhu flex here. It's got a pretty easy flex for a board with a little taper that's directional like this. You get down to the tail, there's a little bit of give there. Between the feet, it's pretty stiff, and you have that little camber reinforcing that stiffness. Then you have the nose. It's a good bit softer than everywhere else. You put it all together and you have pretty good energy with three different camber profiles to try to engage to get it to pop. Sometimes it can be a little confusing, but just like Never Summer always does with their boards, it's a nice balance between being poppy and being damp. And overall, it butters pretty easy too. When it comes to uneven snow, all these bends and having so much board being off the snow can have a little chatter in the tip and tail, but what's really cool is it has that Never Summer dampness. You got a lot of Never Summer magic happening inside the board that allows this to not pass up too much chatter into your joints. So I always appreciate the Never Summer dampness while still having good pop. And when it comes to pointing it, it's not my favorite board to go straight and fast, but the side cut isn't going to fight you either. So the biggest thing is the three cambers and how it has to be slightly on edge when you point it, kind of like you have to with shockwave and ripsaw and rocker and camber, and sometimes can feel a little off if you're flat basing. But it's pretty damp and you can make a straight line or two, no problem, once you get used to this ride. When it comes to base glide, first off, this is super dry. It came pretty good, and I just haven't waxed it after the testing, so sorry about that. I will say though, that this has really good glide when well waxed. Yes, it can get dry and thirsty when it isn't, but it does a lot better than other bases I've tried this dry and this thirsty. So overall, I'm always impressed with Never Summer's base glide. It keeps its speed very well. You just have to be on your game with waxing. Wax it every few days and you're good to go. So when it comes to turning, this wide little 155 I thought would be slower to initiate a turn, but it turned pretty quick. And I think that's because most of the board is off the snow, so you're not really engaging the full side cut. You're just engaging the smallest part of the side cut between the feet where this mellow camber is right here. When I got it over on edge, I felt like it had a pretty balanced turning experience. I would have guessed like mid sevens to low sevens, but it's actually high sevens. And that might be, again, this camber profile giving you a little hurry up through the turn. It turned across the groomer pretty well. I could circle carve okay with this, and it made medium radius turns really well. Longer down the line S turns worked well too, so it's a pretty balanced turning experience, but I think it leans a little more towards the turny side just because of that camber profile. When it comes to getting spring out of the turn, getting off this and then getting on the Proto Ultra or the Never Summer Cougar, which has recurve triple camber. And let me just show you the difference here. You can see there's just so much camber. It has a full camber feel because it has these passive bends throughout the camber profile and then a little bit of early rise. So it actually extends the camber but doesn't hinder the early rise, which is a really cool thing. Coming off this to something like this, the spring, the pop, the drive out of the turn is so much better. With the Nokhu, I found it was hard to lean back into the camber back here and get it to engage from any stance position. I tried them all and moved it all the way forward, all the way back, and tried reference, all stance widths and angles. I couldn't really get it to engage on the front. It made this back feel a little washy. What I found is that just setting it up as close to what I think reference would be, a little bit inside here, and really putting the weight between the feet, and then just slightly leaning a little bit back once this edge is engaged, gave me a decent turning experience, and it was fun to carve. But getting off this and then going to the Cougar with that recurve triple camber, it was just night and day difference. It was such a better spring out of the turn. I feel the same way though about their rocker and camber profiles, the Ripsaw and especially Shockwave. That just had so much more drive and spring out of the turn. But overall, it's a pretty good carver for what it is. And when it comes to powder, I thought this would have more directional setback float. But as you can see, this stance location is pretty centered on board. And yes, this tail sinks a decent amount and the nose helps float pretty well. But when I was in powder, I felt like it had a more centered feel. It didn't want to set back and get as surfy. It's something that's tapered and directional, but you want to throw around switch or go more big mountain and keep it centered so you have landing gear. That's what it's best for. And with a 21.75 inch stance width, which is pretty reasonable, and I almost got all of it with a 21.5 inch stance width, you can get 2.875 inches back from center of board. That's not a lot for a free ride board with 13 mil of taper like this. There are many all mountain boards I've tried that are close to that. So I think I was expecting free ride, but I got a more centered all mountain feel with a free ride shape. With Davey's 161, he could get 3 inches back from center of board, a little bit further back than mine, at a 21.75 inch stance width as well. Usually they're the same setback on board, and the stance width just increases. But with the 55 and 61, it's the opposite. This was pretty doable switch, and I think this would be fun riding in the pipe or hitting some kickers, but not jibbing. And overall, I liked the Nokhu, but it didn't really shine for low angle powder riding, which is what I mainly see, but if you ride in steeper terrain, it could be better for you. And while it wasn't as satisfying on a carve as their recurve or shockwave or even ripsaw camber profiles, it was fun and it had great grip. So if this calls to you and you want a forgiving ride, the Nokhu could work.
Hey everybody, Davey Boy here. I'm going to give you a big guy's perspective on the Never Summer Nokhu. I rode it for about 5 or 6 days. I got it in variable conditions, everything from some decent powder to some very firm, stiff groomers to some nice soft slush. I am 6'3.5", 250, and I rode this in the 161. I think I definitely could have sized up on this board. I think for this board, 165, 166 might be my ideal size. I liked this board a lot. I think this board has a lot of potential. Although the triple camber action made this board just feel a little bit twitchy. It felt a little hooky, almost like the 3 different camber spots were almost fighting each other when you're flat basing or on some hard pack. But outside of hard snow, riding around on slush, I thought this board was really fun on the slush. Once I got kind of used to that, or once the snow got soft enough to kind of mitigate that triple camber, then I really liked this board. But on hard snow and like really firm groomers, this board definitely felt a little twitchy. I didn't really have much confidence taking it off of any big park jumps, or really any park jumps for that matter, just because of that slightly hooky feel. It has a lot of potential in powder, especially if you like a more centered board. Personally, I like something a little more set back. Mount Bachelor isn't the steepest mountain out there. And this 161 floated all right. I think if you're in the 200 to 220 range and you go for something around this size, this board should float better for you than it did for me. I thought this board had a decent turning experience and definitely better in the softer snow. Overall, I think this board has a ton of potential. I think if it had a different camber profile that wasn't this triple camber, like something like their recurve camber, I think this board would blow the socks off of a lot of riders. I think this would be an amazing product if it just had a slightly different camber profile. But if you're looking for something tapered, directional, with a semi-centered stance that is a sort of one board type of quiver, and you don't need the best float for the deepest of powder days, this is definitely a really good option. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to that triple camber, but once you do get used to it, this board has a lot of potential to be a kick-ass board.